You are tuned to the Witching Hours, and I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. Tonight we will be speaking about what is happening in Afghanistan, and we'll also be getting into what is the difference between a Skinwalker and the Rake. I keep seeing all over social media that people are mixing up the meanings of both of the words, so we're going to be getting into that later on in the show. I would like to start off by saying what is happening in Afghanistan right now is truly terrifying, and it is happening 2 decades after the Taliban was removed, or so we thought, removed from Afghanistan in Kabul. So Taliban has almost completely taken over Afghanistan, and so two decades after the 9/11 attacks, which took place September 11th, 2001. I actually went out to New York for the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, and I was at Ground Zero talking about how the official story was not true. And I was there with many of my other activist friends, and we were just speaking about what was going on there. So it's just interesting that exactly 2 decades after that happens, there is absolute chaos now happening in Afghanistan. So all day long I've been seeing videos all over my social media showing Afghani citizens desperately trying to escape Afghanistan. It's pretty heartbreaking, to say the least. If you even just go and check the news, you'll see it's everywhere right now. So is it just me, or does something seem off about all of this? Exactly 2 decades after 9/11. Feels strange or pre-planned. During 2001, we had the same type of president in the United States. George Bush was not the brightest light bulb, and the personality seems almost parallel to Joe Biden's personality. I was just thinking about that tonight. Like, they're both not exactly the most coherent when it comes to speaking in general. But anyway, if anyone has done research into 9/11, you would see it was a controlled demolition. I spoke with Richard Gage on my previous FM radio show on CKCU 93.1 FM in Ottawa, and he's from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and they did research. And since he's an architect, he knows that this was a controlled demolition. He knows how to construct buildings, so he would also know what would tear them down. So he confirmed without a doubt what was going on. So the Taliban has taken over, and people are being murdered. From what I've been hearing, women will lose all of their rights. Many may face consequences in regards to their religion, for if you're a Christian, for instance, or even any other religion, I would assume. So depending on the religion they choose to believe in, they could face consequences. If they have tattoos, they could also face consequences as well. So the Taliban has denied that there has been executions, and allegedly denied that women cannot attend school. According to a BBC interview with Barasan Ethirajan, he was a South Asia correspondent, and he said that the Taliban had denied that this was true, but it seems to be a different story, like women will have to wear a burqa, or something that is only the eyes are being exposed, right? So U.S. troops have taken control of Kabul's international airport. U.S. military has secured the site and are in control of air traffic evacuating. They're currently evacuating Americans and the Allies. So commercial flights are suspended with good reason. Foreign nationals and hundreds of Afghans are stranded. You can just see these people fleeing the city with whatever belongings they have. Some people are being shot at just trying to get to the airport. The Taliban has control over the presidential palace, and the president, Ashraf Ghani, has left Afghanistan to avoid conflict or bloodshed. So the way women dress, and whether they can go to school, is now kind of hanging in the balance They're not exactly sure which way this is going to go, but it looks like it's going to be the same type of rules that was going on in 1996 to 2001. So they even started their own Taliban radio broadcast. It's crazy. So they must wear a veil with a burqa, and the Taliban ruled between 1996 to 2001 in Kabul. Any pictures of women need to be taken down, so like in beauty salons, or if they just have images of women hanging up, they're taking it down, or their faces have to be covered in the images. So they would need to wear a long black dress with only eyes showing, or a burqa. Also, they've changed the national flag to the Taliban flag. So it's back to the same rules as 1996. It's like all of that work for nothing. However, I had a friend who went to Afghanistan and served in the war. Jacob David George. And he was pretty traumatized. He ended up taking his own life after he served in Afghanistan. He said it was a playground for war, and that there was so much disrespect to the Afghanistan peoples that were there from the U.S. military. And he ended up traveling across the United States, playing his banjo and singing music. He wrote some pretty beautiful songs, and he eventually ended up taking his life. I think due to the PTSD and the trauma, the things that he saw while he was serving in the military. So as a human rights activist and as a women's rights activist, just believing in equality in general, this needs to stop. Like, this can't go on. There's people that this is going to create a huge new wave of refugees. You see people fleeing the city, and I've heard that there's scarce food, if any, for some people. So the Pentagon has authorized 1,000 U.S. troops to help with evacuations. So for women, this would be a violation on freedom of expression, freedom of speech. I would assume even the men that are living there are going to have freedom of speech and some freedoms of expression that are stifled, and a feeling of oppression. So also having women in the media needs to be something important, right? Like, as somebody that has my own show, I can't even imagine what would happen if that same thing happened to me and I was not allowed to do the show anymore. Well, that's exactly what is happening to women in Afghanistan right now. They won't be allowed to partake in any form of media or freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So it's not right. It's a violation on basic human rights, what's happening right now. The Taliban will pay for this. The weapons intended for Kabul are now in the hands of the Taliban. So this is terrifying. Afghan people attempted to grab onto a plane leaving Kabul airport. In videos you can see online, people falling to their death from the airplane as it's taking off into the air. It's all too similar to what happened on September 11th, 2001. Watching people fall to their death, jumping from the Twin Towers. It's the exact same thing, exactly 2 decades later. Like, it's either things are pre-planned or it's just a creepy deja vu that's happening right now. So Taliban fires guns. They were firing the gunshots outside of the Kabul airport at people that were trying to get onto the airplane to try to find some form of freedom or get away from what is going on. Apparently they came in the night and took over. So what is going on here, right? How can this be stopped? I'm hoping that other countries realize how much of a human rights violation this is and don't allow them to have complete control over Afghanistan. Something is just sparking a new war, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of a terrorist terrorist attack or some form of attack here in the Western world, I would not be surprised in the least if we saw something like that. Because this is just too familiar. I'm 36, so when I first saw what happened, I was born in 1985, so 2001, I was 16 years old, I believe, when I first saw, I was in drama class when 9/11 happened. And the weirdest thing about that, it seems so suspicious with 9/11, you know, like, I don't want to get too much into it, but I would not be surprised if we saw some sort of attack over here in the Western world. So, the whole world needs to stand up right now and fight for the rights of the Afghani people, because this is just horrifying what is happening right now. We're also seeing a lockdown in Australia, which is very similar to what happened here in Quebec. So the same type of restrictions. They cannot go outside after 9. We had the same thing here in Quebec. And also some people, they can't go to their jobs unless they have the jab. It's just so many human rights violations have been happening over the past couple years, just in the history of existence. But these things need to change. It's like we're living on hell on earth, or it's the end times or something. I just wish everybody would have peace and happiness and freedom, you know. That's why I have this tattoo on my neck, because it is our common bond. And that is what Bill Cooper said. He said, what is our common bond? Truly, freedom is our common bond. And if someone else in this world is experiencing an injustice, and we do nothing, and we say nothing to stop it, then we're serving no purpose here. We should be speaking up against these injustices. So I do want to get into the difference between skinwalkers and the rake, and if there might actually be a possible correlation between the two. So for the longest time, I thought that skinwalkers and the rake were separate until I did a little bit of research, which has me thinking that some sightings might actually be one or the other, or maybe they're the same thing. So skinwalkers are typically known as an evil medicine man or an evil witch or medicine woman shapeshifter that transforms into an animal, object, or another human form entirely. So they're also known as the Nal Delushi. By means of it, it goes on all fours is the translation. So he or she that goes on all fours. So powerful witches or medicine men who have achieved this high level of priesthood. A skinwalker wears the skin of the animal they transform and shapeshift into the animal or some form of that animal. So there is a belief that in order to become a skinwalker, you must actually murder someone who you are close with. So it could be a family member, could be a friend. And I would assume that that would potentially give you this type of power, this dark energy type of power, which would allow you to shapeshift. That is what the belief is anyway. So they can mimic the sound of any voice or human. Still human. It's important to remember that skinwalkers are still human, but they are shapeshifters. Now, with the rake, they are what I thought was something else entirely separate. I'm going to get into why I think there may be some form of a correlation. So with the rake, they are pale skin. They have black eyes. They also have It was about 6 feet tall, or maybe a bit taller, when I witnessed the rake November 15th, 2015. I was out running midnight, and I saw it float out from a bush a foot off the ground, and then it ran away on all fours like a gorilla, stopped at the corner of Richmond and Grennan, looked at me in the eyes, and then it ran to its left on all fours like a gorilla. So the thing about that is it was running on all fours, and that is the exact translation of Skinwalker. The translation of Nadalushi means by means of it, it goes on all fours. So the rake, when I saw it, was pale skin, no visible genitalia, hairless. It's exactly what people describe it as, and I saw it running like a gorilla was like running on all fours, you know, using its hands to propel its weight forward. And I've talked about this on the show before. So I think that that could be an interesting correlation between the two. Is the rake a form of shape-shifting? Or is it they've gone so far into dark magic that they now look like this demonic creature that terrorizes people in the middle of the night? And it was only midnight when I witnessed it. And it was hands down the scariest experience I've ever had. So is this a form of a skinwalker? I feel like it could be separate, but the explanation is the same. However, skinwalkers transform into animals that also run on all fours. Maybe it is related in some way. Maybe it's the same thing. Or maybe it's totally separate and skinwalkers just transform into animals and creepy versions of animals. And the rake just looks like this demonic gray alien being with a smaller cranium. It has a head that was about the size of a human head, maybe a little bit bigger, but not the size of a small gray alien or the size of a tall gray alien. It wasn't that big. I've seen a small gray before in person. It looks exactly like what you see on all the movies. It looks identical to that. So is there a correlation here? I think that there might be. Or it could just be that animals run on all fours and the rake also runs on all fours. And they're just both creepy things that terrorize people in the middle of the night and try to cause chaos and fear. I was afraid to go running at night for a very, very long time after that experience. So that is the important difference to keep in mind. It is an evil medicine man or an evil witch or medicine woman that kills an animal, wears the skin, and can shapeshift and transform. And the rake looks like a demonic gray alien with a human-sized cranium, no genitalia, and it's hairless and runs on all fours. So there's a lot of things happening at nighttime. Perhaps we just don't even want to acknowledge that it's going on. But our world is very mysterious indeed. I had another theory about what the rake might possibly be. And perhaps it is not a demonic creature at all. Perhaps it is not a shapeshifter or an alien or a skinwalker. I feel there could be a potential for it to be a humanoid that just coexists or was created from an experiment. To think that the government has done a lot of experiments over the years, who's to say that they did not create this creature? The potential that they have created it. It's a possibility, right? We have Bigfoot. We have all these other humanoid creatures that we see. Who's to say that the rake is not just a creation that was made in a lab somewhere? Either way, it is terrifying. I don't wish it upon anybody to ever see what I saw 6 years ago. And I hope I never see it again. Feel free to share this episode on social media and spread the word about what is happening in Afghanistan right now. to the Afghani people that are being forced into fleeing their cities. It is absolutely horrifying. And we need to be talking about this. If you have any paranormal experiences, please reach out via my website, Kanaska.com, and let me know what you've experienced. Have you seen the Rake before? Have you seen a Skinwalker before? Or something even more terrifying that perhaps bumps in the night? On the next episode, I will be getting into reincarnation and how mysterious that is. So we will be speaking about that on an upcoming episode of The Witching Hours. As always, thank you for tuning in to this show, and I will see you next Wednesday for another episode of The Witching Hours. I'm your host, Kanaska Carter, and I will see you next week. I love you guys. Bye.